Welcome to Experiment Zone's first episode. I'm AJ Davis, and I had the chance to speak with Jake from GolfRoots today. It was a really wonderful conversation. We got to hear about why Jake and his team are doing what they do at GolfRoots. They're repurposing and sharing golf clubs with players of all levels. We got to hear about their success growing their social media following. And most importantly for our audience, we dove into the conversion audit. We took a look at their site together, looking at things like the homepage, the navigation and value propositions, and just generally talked about great digital marketing strategy together. I had a great time talking with Jake. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. So let's jump in. Hi, welcome to this episode of Experiment Zone. We're here today with Jake from GolfRoots to hear more about the GolfRoots company and to also provide a free conversion audit. Nice to have you on today.
Excited to be here.
Thanks for being on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about GolfRoots.
Absolutely. So I am the co-founder, COO of GolfRoots, and our mission is really to make golf more affordable, more accessible, more sustainable. And we do that by kind of upcycling pre-owned clubs. We have some new clubs as well, but really making it easy for people to access those cheaper, affordable options online, direct to consumer.
And who is your target audience?
Our target audience it's quite large, actually. We have a very even distribution all the way from, 18 to 60 years old, which has really surprised us. But it's mostly men right now, and that's just because it's harder to find pre-owned women's clubs. But we definitely, try to skew that kind of 18 to 35-year-old, really those kind of young professionals, people that are starting to play golf for the first time who don't want to spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a set of brand new clubs.
When you talk to prospects or when you hear from them through your site, what are some questions or confusions they currently have about how the product works and how they receive it and things like that?
Definitely. I think the confusion is probably, we have a starter set called the Just the Root set. And the goal of this is really to provide customers and new golfers with the bare essentials for golf. It's 4 clubs, 5 balls, kind of the basics you need to start swinging and see if you like it and test it out. And so a lot of times people will read the description and be confused as to what exactly it includes, and they'll also be wondering how they can redeem this set for credit, which is something else we provide. We say we'll give you a refund towards a full set. And so they're sometimes confused about how that actually works operationally. And then we also have full sets that actually are also including kind of everything you'd need to play. It's 14 clubs, driver, all the way through putter, which for even non-golfers, you might sense that is kind of exactly what you need. You could buy it in one place and not do anything else. And so they just are confused about, how we pick those sets, how we design them, how we put them together, and they're quite large. So actually how we ship them sometimes.
What are some of your goals for conversion this year?
So our conversion rate historically has been hovering between 0.5 and 0.6%, which is quite low, and has been a major issue of struggle for us, I would say. So, I think we would love to get that up even as we grow. We know that it's hard to do that with, more cold traffic coming in, but I think getting that somewhere closer to industry average, or at least that, 0.75 to 1% would be awesome. And so I think really just doing everything we can to make sure that, we're taking action and increasing that and testing, what works, what doesn't work as well.
Great. And, a big factor for conversion rates, at least for a baseline, is where you're getting traffic from. So can you tell us a little bit about your digital marketing strategy?
Absolutely. We have, a big organic and non-organic strategy. So we spend about 80% of our paid budget right now on Facebook. And then we spend about the remaining 20% on Google ads. So search ads, and then some of the other types that they have, but mostly on search. I would say the other kind of half of our traffic probably comes or maybe not half, maybe more like a third actually comes from kind of the organic content we post. About a year ago, we decided to really go very heavy on, TikTok and Instagram, and it's worked really well for us. We went from about 2,000 total followers to 130,000 or 140,000 now. So, that's been huge for us. And over the summer, I think it led to about 40% of our sales. And we got that from, Google Analytics and some post-purchase surveys. So, those are the two big channels that we get it through, and breaking it down between organic and paid.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on that success so far.
Thank
That
you.
sounds like a really successful campaign. And before we jump into the audit, typically we see there's kind of some businesses are mobile only, mobile first. Some companies really split, kind of depending on the product. What do you find for your visitors? Are you getting most people on mobile these days?
Most people on mobile these days, and I think that's exactly right. It's about 5 to 1 mobile
I,
to the desktop.
okay, great. All right. And we will go ahead and jump right in then. Let me get my screen shared. For those first time listeners, what we do in our next section of this podcast is we're going to do a live audit of golfroots.com. I'll have my screen shared so you can follow along to see what the website looks like today. We'll go screen by screen. I'll give some thoughts about some challenges or questions that visitors might have as they're here, especially first time visitors. What we find is that for our audience, not only does GolfRoots get to walk away with some really specific improvements today, and also some specific things to A/B test. The other thing is we're really just talking about big concepts that matter for conversion. So get your pen out, take some notes, and we're ready to jump in. And so tell us a little bit about your homepage. We're looking at golfroots.com. Give us a little sense of like how you thought about this page, and then we'll dive in with some feedback.
So we really think a lot about the kind of story brand concept. I'm trying to remember the author's name, but basically we wanted to make this page as clear as possible about exactly who we are and exactly what we do. And so you can kind of see in the middle of this page, it says affordable pre-owned clubs for every level. And so our idea and our hope is that, anybody could come onto this site and immediately know who we are and what we do. We really want to prioritize the experience, right? We don't want, the clubs to overshadow the actual love of the game. You could play with 30-year-old clubs if you wanted to, which is
Mhm.
why we have that kind of subtext. But, we really wanted to make it abundantly clear with no kind of confusion about who we are and what we're providing.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that would be my positive feedback on this page. So I think what I love about this page is that it addresses that direct brand message. So as you said, affordable pre-owned clubs for every level. It answers the what and the who. And then your next sentence also speaks a bit to the why. So why golf routes, which is spend less on clubs and more on the experience. So those are the three elements that we see a lot of brands forget about when they build their homepage. A lot of the templates include promoting a new product or things that you might see on Amazon.com or Nike.com where people already know what brand is all about. So I love that you're starting there. I love that you have the build your own bag CTA. Low hanging fruit here. I'm going to divide some of my feedback between fixes, so things just to go ahead and do. And then we'll also talk about some A/B tests, which are things that I feel confident in, but we'd want to validate in the real world by giving 50% of people one experience and 50% the current experience. So for a fix, build your bag on mobile. We have a nice button here. It is action oriented, but I'd love to see it be a bigger size of this screen. So it's an easier click target and more visible. A really quick test you can do that is not scientific, but is helpful in understanding design elements is if you sit back in your chair and squint your eyes. I call it my squint test. If the CTA isn't what's standing out when you do that, it's not quite the right contrast and scale. So this is one, I think you're close on it, but I would bump that up and increase the size here.
Right.
I like that we're seeing the reviews and social proof validation right away. That's nice to see. And I suspect I could go through there to see more. There are some dots here and now, there's some more information back here. I suspect most people don't interact with that element. And so I would, instead of having it be separate on mobile, like this little slider, I would just stack the two so you can see both of these at the same time and it doesn't require that additional interaction.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's something that I think is likely, on desktop, they're next to each other, and I think that's probably something on mobile we missed.
Absolutely. And that happens to everyone, right? A lot of us sit at our desktops to design the website, but we need to kind of go back and go, oh, that's right. That's how that should work on mobile. So perfect. Little fixes here and there. I see that you've got shop by club type here. So we can now scroll through and see some of these. Generally, what we find in A/B testing, and so this may be an A/B test for you, is that instead of these big sliders with big click targets, exposing maybe button size targets of like drivers, woods, etc., in a stacked list here gives a comparison right away. So you mentioned that you're helping new golfers get their first set of clubs. And so for them, they may not know all these different categories and where to go. The one other thing you might do is include like a bestsellers here so they can jump right into the shortcut of here's what I should probably look at first. And then for a little bit more experienced people or people working with someone else, they can get into these specific club types. All right. And then you've got your Instagram. Tell us a little bit about your Instagram and the content that we're seeing here.
Absolutely. Our Instagram is really aimed to be kind of that educational component for newer golfers, and then also, highlighting weird, specific, funny golf clubs for people who are already into that community. So we're trying to make the game a lot more approachable for those newer people, and then for the people that are already, into the game. For example, you can see there's a head cover on the screen there that has a bunch of colored dots. We were kind of asking each other, what's the coolest head cover we have in our warehouse? And so it's really just a lot of the documenting versus creating. That was really how we started off doing this. I'm a computer science and economics background. My co-founder is a history and Spanish major, so we are not necessarily the digitally Instagram influencer type. And so documenting what we were doing and how we were thinking about, our business was really how we started creating these videos, and it's kind of turned into this educational, informational type of profile.
That's great. And I like the personal touch that we're seeing here too. We're seeing a real person alongside the products too. Um, this is something that so kind of a fix here for clarity because you're speaking to that playful education piece. In addition to the follow us, maybe there's something around like learn more or get more information about how we think about clubs or something here to kind of nudge what kind of content they're going to get. We've generally done some testing around, do we want people to leave our sites to go to Instagram or do we want them to stay and browse? Because you're working with new consumers to golf, it may be something that is very important. And so it would be something I'd A/B test, kind of the placement of this information, how it weaves into the brand story on the homepage and elsewhere on the site. Because we may not want them to leave, but at the same time, this might reinforce their confidence to get started for the first time. So
I
I
wa
think
I
that would
was
be a
gonna
good
ask
test.
actually, how do you reconcile, we really added this for kind of social proof and also to show more of who we are, but how do you reconcile those 2 things, right? Not wanting them to leave, but also wanting to kind of show that you do have a profile, you are real people,
Mhm.
etcetera.
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally the hierarchy of a homepage should include what you have in that first block, right? The homepage hero, who you are, what you're doing, why they should buy from you, because that's that first moment of capturing attention. Then you want to introduce some social proof and validation, which you also have around some of those reviews. One of the things that is missing is the idea of specific products being shown on your homepage. So when we did our introduction today, you mentioned there's 2 sets that are really commonly sold. I didn't see that yet. And so I'd expect to see that either second or third on the homepage. So I can dive right into specific products and I don't have to navigate through categories and different details. I generally find in testing the fastest path we can give people to a product page, the faster they're going to convert or the more likely they are to convert. Because some people want to browse. You can imagine someone like running into a Target and they're going to run through every single aisle and just kind of take their time and see what inspires them. That's the analogous to someone who's going through your category pages. You can imagine someone who walks into a physical store and is like, here's the product I want. And they go through search, right? That's like asking an associate, where do I find this item? And then the third kind of person is someone who's looking at those end caps and they're not going down the aisles. And that's actually the most common way we see in physical store shopping that also holds up in the web. So we want to promote certain products on the homepage. So to come back to your question around, well, how do we balance that brand story and make being personal? I think that having it further down the page is one way to do it. If they've gotten to this point after seeing products, social proof, et cetera, they're still researching and understanding the brand. And then there's a question of, can I interact here versus do I need to go somewhere else? And then the other intersection is being able to kind of put Instagram as the secondary action while still leveraging the content on the site. So maybe there's a couple of posts that you think really effectively communicate the brand. Maybe you highlight and spotlight one of those videos and then have us see more at the bottom. So you can keep them on the site, get them interacting with some of that content, but keep them in the context of the website.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
And then I think the other side is like the human behind the brand. And that's always a tough balance. Some brands are really founder driven and do need that narrative behind them. And then others are so product driven that people are never going to ask, like, who built this? Why did they build it? And so that, again, is kind of a testing subject of kind of that spotlight on the founder story, talking about like the challenges you've had so it's relatable. And balancing that with your own customer stories, like why have your customers benefited? Why have they decided to go this way for their first golf?
Right. Yeah, and that's something we have tested a little bit historically, although probably not enough, definitely not enough. We started out doing these kind of very authentic, kind of just cameras on, let's start talking style videos, and people seem to think that we are a kind of no BS, just some young guys who love golf, and we are. But it's kind of stuck with us a little bit to the point where people will say, you're just as dorky in person as you are online. And while it's funny, it really speaks to, what we've created. But I do think you're right. We don't want to be dependent on, one or two people, and at least we need to test, if we are dependent right now.
And maybe you want to be. Maybe the story
Right.
is we're a bunch of dorky golf nerds. Trust us to find your first club set for you.
Exactly.
Right. That could be exactly it. And maybe there's a spotlight on the homepage that speaks to that, or something on a product page that reinforces that as you move through the journey. So don't be afraid of your story, but I think just follow us on Instagram isn't clear enough of an action or motivator for why someone should interact with this content and how that's going to help them with their purchase. We want to avoid just like plugging in a video or plugging in some social posts on a page. And we want to tell people what we want them to do with that information. The more explicit we can be, the easier it is for people to interact and convert.
That makes sense.
All right, well, let's jump in. I'm going to follow the CTA, the primary CTA on the top, which takes me to this category page. This listing page seems to align with a pretty standard approach. So we've got search, filters. This looks like a sort by dropdown. And in golf, I imagine there's quite a lot of filtering that can be required. So you
Yes.
don't have to look at everything. So these all look like a good start here. How have you decided on the filter categories?
So that's a really good point. A lot of us, or a lot of the feedback we've gotten has been about adding different aspects, right? So, at the start, it was like, shaft flex. And for example, for the non-golfers out there, you have essentially 5 or 6 major types of shaft flex, going from women's, which in theory is kind of very bendy, to extra stiff, which is more like a pencil, or, it's not bending at all, right? So that is really dependent on the type of golfer. And we included that originally, but this would be a great example of somebody saying, hey, I want to search by extra stiff, so it wouldn't be helpful to show them a women's or maybe a senior flex, again, where it's very bendy. And so it's really come from a lot of customer feedback after we kind of intuitively had broken down things based off of, like handedness or gender. We had a few basic ones to start. And then as we, launched and have continued to grow, we'll get emails from people saying, hey, can you guys add this? That happened with condition fairly recently. And And yeah, I think it's just an iterative process, and we try to listen to our customers.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting place for filters as well as navigation. I think those are two categories where we should listen to what our customers are asking for. The nice complement to that would be to add some analytics tracking on it to see like what are people actually clicking on and interacting with here. And then generally the higher up something is, the more they're going to interact with it. So when we see exceptions to it, so maybe the shaft flex is the most popular, or maybe it's third most popular, maybe that means we need to move it up on the list. And so that's a nice way to kind of balance the data drivenness of making some of these decisions versus an A B test where maybe you would overhaul it all to play with some of the interaction or introduce some more conversion focused things like price or reviews or things like that.
Right.
Great. All right. I do want to look at the nav while we're here. So you've got men's clubs, women's clubs, clearance. And take a look here. And this looks like it's aligned to categories. I think one of the things I would recommend here as well, brand new clubs is not used clubs. Is that right?
That's correct. So
Okay.
I would say literally 95% of what we have are pre-owned clubs.
Mhm.
And then the brand new clubs, we have a decent amount of, literally in the wrapper clubs that we've gotten as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and that's something where I think it makes sense. There's almost like there's two kind of groups above these categories that we often think about, which is best selling, which may or may not be as relevant. Although you did mention those kind of two sets, those might be under best sellers, and then new, which yours are actually a mix of new products that
Right.
are brand new versus products that are new to the website. And so that might be a category that you would do some experimentation around. Is there something that's kind of can show like trending or brand new things to the site that someone who has been shopping here wants to see? And we generally find in testing that adding it at the level above these categories here are analogous to these, right? Bestsellers or new or kind of these shortcut navigation paths can be very effective. So, but overall, this looks like a clear structure that aligns with the brand that you mentioned, like the way that you guys position your brand in the products. It's pretty intuitive. It aligns with some of the other golf brands we've worked with. So I understand intuitively how to start there. And we are quickly running through our 15-minute audit. So I actually want to turn it back to you because we've run through a couple of things here today. What are three things as a result of this conversation you're going to bring back to improve conversion?
I think the first thing would be, right on the homepage, right away, that squint test. I thought that was a really neat way of thinking about it. So expanding that button to build your bag seems like an easy place to start for us. I think that moving our just the roots set, which is that beginner set, it is actually on the homepage. We didn't get to it, but it's at the very bottom. And
E-
so the fact that we didn't even address it, um, shows me that we pretty clearly need to move it up. And then I think one other big takeaway that we addressed closer to the end was the need for some sort of bestsellers category in the navigation. And I think that's going to be important for us, but also challenging because, as you alluded to, we only have a couple big uh, big products that we can sell consistently, right? We really have one of every product. And so I think it's a great idea for us to put our heads together and think about how we can cater that experience to, the customers, whether that's showing, the new 2024 Callaway driver, or whether that's showing kind of our best deals, our most popular clubs that we see on a regular basis. So I think those would be kind of the three things that I would immediately take away, and then obviously there are a bunch more things that I'll go into as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for recapping that for us. So my last question is for folks listening along today, how can they get in touch? How can they learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. You could Google GolfRoots and we should pop up. If you want to follow us on social media, we're at golf.roots, or on TikTok, we're um, just GolfRoots actually. So yeah, it's really easy. Just search us online and, follow along if you're interested in golf, or if you're already a major golfer, check us out. But yeah, I appreciate the time today. Thanks, AJ.
Yeah, and I'm going to check out, it sounds like you've got some great videos on Instagram. So I'm going to check that out after our call today. Those sound like great entry points to get to know you and the brand as well. So thanks for being on. We appreciate it. And thanks for sharing your journey to improving your conversion rates.
Absolutely. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you for tuning in to the Experiment Zone podcast. You can check out more episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and your favorite podcast apps. Check out the show notes for any websites linked to this episode, including where to connect with us on social media. We appreciate you tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you'll be updated of each episode release. And visit us at experimentzone.com for all podcast updates as well. Appreciate you dropping by.